The robots.txt file has been around since 1994, making it over 20 years old. That's a really long time when it comes to the internet. You know, that's before smartphones, before Facebook, before the cloud. In fact, 1994 was when the very first season of the TV show Friends aired, which that's a blast from the past. The robots.txt file came about when, back in 1994, a misconfigured web crawler crashed a server belonging to a guy named Koster, and that's his last name. And so because of that, he proposed a standard called the robots exclusion standard, which would tell search bots, which is the same as a web crawler, what parts of a website it could crawl or whether it could crawl the website at all. The robots.txt file is just a simple text file that lives in the root directory of your web server in the file system that represents your website. Here's a simple robots.txt file. Just has 2 lines, and what these 2 lines are saying is that any search bot, remember search bots and web crawlers, same thing, can crawl any part of the website. Okay, so here's another robots.txt file, and it looks very much the same except that there's a slash after the disallow. And what that slash says is that any search bot may not crawl any part of the website. Pretty interesting the difference one character makes. So let's just say you've launched a new website and it's not showing up in the Google search results. If that's happening to you, you might want to check out the robots.txt file to make sure you haven't accidentally told the crawlers never to crawl your site. Now you can put individual URLs into the robots.txt and directories, and this would tell the crawlers not to crawl that one page or that directory. And let's just say you have an e-commerce site and you have a couple pages where it doesn't really make sense for the searcher to land on right away, like an empty checkout cart page. So if I'm searching and then I click and I land on an empty checkout cart page, that's not really a great experience for me. It'd be much better if I landed on a product page, looked at the product, decided to buy it, and then added it to the cart, and then went to the checkout cart page. So you're like, okay, I don't think these pages should show up in the Google search results, so I'm going to add a disallow for this one URL. It looked like something like this, and that will keep the page out of the search results, right? Well, not exactly. So this is where we need to understand the difference between crawling and indexation. Crawling is when the web crawlers or the search bot, they come to your site and they discover all the pages on your site by crawling through following links from one page to another. Indexation is a subsequent phase to the crawling where the information that was found is processed and then placed in a repository we call the search engine index. And it's that index that is used to serve up the search engine result pages. So the thing about crawling and indexation is they're 2 separate things. Just because a search engine can't crawl your page, it doesn't mean that they won't index that page. They may have found that page because you placed that URL in your XML sitemap, or perhaps there's an incoming link to that page from an external site. So crawling and indexation are separate things, and if you prevent the search engine from crawling that page, the problem is that that page gets indexed with not very descriptive information. So if you see a listing in the search engine result pages that looks something like this means that your URL is blocked in the robots.txt file, but that Google found the page anyway. So okay, now we understand that blocking URLs or directories using the robots.txt disallow statement will not keep pages from showing up in the Google index. So what do we use to keep pages out of the index? Well, there is a tag called the meta robots no index tag that you can add to your page, and when the crawler comes through and sees that tag, it will know to either not put it in the index, or if the page is already in the index, to go ahead and remove the page from the index. Now here's the key. The crawler has to see the tag. So if you have a disallow preventing the crawler from crawling that page, it will never see the no index tag. The page will stay in the index and you'll wonder why. And that's why. So make sure that for the pages you've no indexed that you don't have disallows in place for those URLs. Another way that you could be hurting your site's SEO is to block access to your JavaScript and CSS file. This used to be okay to do, but Google in particular has gotten very smart, and it understands at least partially your JavaScript and CSS. So it's important to go ahead and allow the search engine crawlers access to these files so they'll have a very complete understanding of your site. So we've covered a couple scenarios where robots.txt disallow can actually hurt your site's SEO. Robots.txt, like a lot of things, is a tool that can be helpful if it's used wisely. And it's important to understand that robots.txt is a tool that helps you control the crawling of your site by search bots, but not necessarily the indexation. Now let's just cover a couple of scenarios where the robots.txt file could be helpful to you. One example is that you have an internet-facing staging site, and of course the staging site has pretty much the same content as your production site. So you don't want content from both showing up in the search engine result pages, because that would be duplicate content, which is definitely not helpful for your site's SEO. So what you want to do is go ahead and set up a robots.txt disallow for the entire site, and you want to publish that 24 hours before you publish the rest of the content of the staging site. That's a little bit of an extra safety measure to make sure that the site, the robots.txt file, is seen before the rest of the content is. The other case may be with a large dynamic site that has faceted navigation that creates all sorts of pages that are not necessarily that valuable for SEO. And with large sites, it's important to make sure that the crawler is spending time with your important pages for SEO and not wasting a lot of crawler bandwidth with pages that are not that important for SEO. So robots.txt disallows could be helpful there. And then finally, you could use robots.txt disallows in conjunction with the remove URL feature of Google Search Console. So for example, let's just say that staging site did get indexed and is showing up in the search engine result pages. What you could do is then set up the disallow for the full site, and then you can go into the remove URL feature and remove that site from the Google index. You can also do this with directories for a site as well. So it's really good for pages and directories and sites that were never intended to be indexed and crawled in the first place. Just keep in mind that you do need to be set up and verified with Google Search Console to use this feature. I hope this video has helped you understand the robots.txt file a little better. Particularly, I wanted to clear up the common misperception that the robots.txt file is a foolproof way to keep pages out of the Google index. On the flip side, one common scenario I've seen is when site owners inadvertently block all access to their site with robots.txt, and this can sometimes happen with new sites. You or your developer may have set up a disallow for the entire site, like I showed before, during pre-launch because you're still working on your site and not wanting people to see it until it's done. And this is a totally valid thing to do. But then when you launch, you forget to remove that backslash out of the robots.txt file that I showed you earlier. A misconfigured robots.txt file is just one way you could be having lurking SEO problems with your site that is preventing you from ranking like you should. So I put together a checklist that shows you how to check for 3 additional common SEO issues. These checks all use free tools, which I give you the links to in the checklist. So go ahead and visit the URL shown here, or click on the link in the video description below to get your free copy so that you have what you need to make sure your site does not have these issues that could be preventing you from ranking and getting the organic traffic that your site deserves.